Welcome to the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. This is the source for all things high adventure for scouts, scouters, and anyone else interested in promoting high adventure trips for our youth. You can find all kinds of great high adventure options for your scouts at highadventurescouting.com. We are constantly updating the list of cool trips, and we want your input on your best trip. Welcome, high adventure enthusiasts. We are excited, as always, to highlight a high adventure base on this edition of the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. Today, we're joined by Rory Fencl. He's the Council Program Director and the Reservation Director at the Ma-Ka-Ja-Wan High Adventure Base in Wisconsin, operated by the Northeast Illinois Council. Rory, thanks for joining us today on the High Adventure Scouting Podcast.
It's great to be here.
Well, as I tell everybody at the beginning of this podcast, or any of the podcasts, the purpose is to give the listeners a little more information about your program offerings. And I'm sure many outside your regional area don't know much about your program. So give me just an overview of the High Adventure program in your council, and we'll just kind of drill down from there.
Yeah, so Makajawan High Adventure Base has been in continuous operations since 1976, where we started off on offering some basic backpacking trips up to the Porcupine Mountains and long, kind of week-long canoe trips. Most of our high adventure treks are in the 4 to 7 day range, so that it kind of ties in nicely with the troops in camp presence, because we're partnered up with our Makajawan Scout Reservation's overnight camps in East and West Camp. So we have a lot of units that'll bring up a whole bunch of scouts for their overnight camp during the summer, and then they'll have some scouts that pull off and go on a high adventure trek. So they get to have their older scouts there for a little while. They get to have their younger scouts going through the normal scout program as well. So it kind of ties in really nicely, and we go as far away as the Boundary Waters or Pictured Rocks and kind of everywhere in between, all over the Northwoods. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you answered one of my questions I usually ask is if there's, connected programs where there's high adventure and then there's, regular camp programs for the younger scouts. So you kind of answered that initially, because I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, and a few years ago, we actually started up a new program that's much more focused on kind of day trips or in-camp high adventure called the Cours de Bois, which is French for the wood runners. And that way, if a unit has kind of some older scouts that they still need to have in camp as kind of their unit leadership, their youth leadership, they can still have those older scouts up at camp who get to have a new experience that they don't get typically, but they get to go out on a day, spend a half day climbing, spend a half day out on the river, spend a whole day on the river, but then they're still able to come back and have breakfast and dinner with the troop.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a couple years old, and we've had a lot of interest in it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, that kind of leads me to the next curious question is, you talked about kind of these day trip options, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Again, I'll let you pronounce the French. I don't know French, and I'm not very good at it. So, but give me a rundown on the different options that, in addition to this day trip option that I can't pronounce, the different options that crews or troops will come up and be a part of.
Yeah, so our I mentioned a little bit ago, but the core trips are our canoeing on the Turtle Flambeau flowage, which is a great spot. There's a huge variety of trips that people can do there. From, if you want to do mostly river trips, we can put in at different points all along the rivers that lead up to the flowage, as well as the rivers that lead out from the flowage. And then on the actual flowage itself, it's much more of a lake paddling experience. But my personal favorite one that I've both been on as a scout as well as a guide is doing the whole flowage from the very early kind of rivers to putting out onto or taking out on the Flambeau River, and you get some kind of meandering, lots of oxbows in the rivers, and then you get to go out on the lakes and camp out on different islands all over the flowage, and then you portage over a dam, so you get some portaging experience, and then you go out on on a river that has some class 1 and 2 rapids, so for a little bit of whitewater canoeing experience too. So that's probably my favorite trip personally. Um, but I know that we get a lot of troops that just would love to go fishing there. Another one that we get a lot of that people really love is the Porcupine Mountains backpacking trip, which is at the Porcupine Mountain State Park or State Wilderness Area. And that's another great one. It's good for beginners because there's some shorter loops. It's good for people who are looking for more complicated trips because there are a lot of options just to do a few miles in a day or many miles in a day. And then another one that we started up recently is the Ice Age Trail. And as yeah, the Ice Age Trail is always fairly close to civilization, but it's a pretty rugged trail. So that's another one that's really good for all skill levels. And probably our premier trips for people who really want to get out into the sticks and really get away from everything and put their skills to the test that they've learned through the rest of their scouting experiences, backpacking on Isle Royale, and then canoeing in the Boundary Waters. So those are all the Isle Royale and Boundary Waters treks are longer. They're in the 7 to 8 day range, just for the extra travel logistics. But all of our treks are pretty customizable, and we're able our guides are trained, and so we send guides out with every trek, and they can serve the role of the teacher, or they can serve the role of just making sure everybody's staying safe and learning the skills that they need to stay on trail and get back home.
Cool. Now, from what you were kind of giving me the overview of all these different trips, I'm trying to write them all down, but it's just there's a whole lot. And my and you kind of answered one of my questions is all right. These sound fairly set trips, but there's some ability to kind of change those depending on what the group wants to do. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, and we'll be as soon as people fill in their reservation form, we'll start that conversation with them through the off season. So the earlier you get your reservation form in and just kind of start that conversation, the more the the more awesome your trip is going to be.
Exactly. Now, is there a typical start day for treks and trips outside of the normal summer camp programs, or is it set, or is it kind of whenever you get up there, whenever you arrange it?
Most of our treks start on Sunday, so you'll arrive Sunday afternoon, and then we'll go through a shakedown, check gear, go through food, kind of do all the normal kind of introductions and make sure that everybody knows each other and review the map. And then Monday morning we'll head out to the trailheads and get either our paddles moving or our feet stomping. So like I mentioned before, the Boundary Waters and Isle Royale are a little bit more extensive of trips just because they have more travel time in them. Isle Royale is a 2 hour boat ride to get there, no matter what. Doesn't matter how early you get there. It still takes 2 hours to cross over Lake
Right.
Superior. So, um, yeah. So
Well, and
those are
that was my question. I figured that would be a little bit different than the most of the programs because it was longer. So
yeah, and those you would typically arrive on a Saturday, but because those are more customizable, if you're coming up just to do one of those, we can be more flexible.
right,
We're all about being flexible and making sure that people can get the experience that they're looking for.
exactly. That's awesome. Now, is there a minimum, maximum size that you look for? Um, some of these crews, not the day trips, but some of these trips that we've talked about.
Yeah, so minimum would be 4 to 5 people, and then maximum changes depending on what destination you're going to. 6 and 12 are just really good numbers because a lot of the land managing agencies up in our neck of the woods have either a 6 person group limit or a 12 person group limit. Um, so that's kind of multiples of six are the best because then we can we can really use the facilities and the trails and everything to their full capacity. But
Right,
yeah,
exactly. Because I've been to the Boundary Waters and I know they have some guidelines on how many you can have, and I know some of the waterways up in New York are the same way. So I wasn't sure how it was in your area, so that's good to know.
mm-hmm.
Good. And what kind of staff do you guys have during the? I mean, you mentioned you've got a guide that goes with the groups. Where do they come from? What's their backgrounds?
Most of our guides are scouts that have been through our program who have either been on our high adventure trips or they're in school for outdoor recreation, or they've just got a knack for it in their own. They do a lot of adventuring on their own. Um, we have um, we have some guides who work with a guiding company based out of Chicago as well during other parts of the year too. So um, we do a full week of training with all of our guides together, and just make sure that people's skills are still up to par, and do some team building and just do some skill building. And yeah, so we have typically between 4 and 7 staff members, and they kind of fill all the roles at the base, from quartermastering to food packing and all that. And we kind of rotate people out so that they can get time off the trail and also time on the trail. Most of the people that we have as our guides really like to just be out on the trail as much as possible. So
Exactly. Yeah, I'll kind of come back as far as we talked about minimum and maximum size. I forgot to ask if you have a smaller group, or if you have just a couple people from a troop, are you able to combine them into another crew to kind of make a larger crew, or how do you handle smaller groups or provisional groups or provisional people?
yeah, so we'll just, it's all part of that initial conversation. And if they want to go somewhere that we've got other people going to, we'll see if the basically try and play matchmaker between different groups. If we get enough provisional people interested, we'll set up a provisional trek. And as we have some dedicated volunteers that love to come back and guide trips too, who meet all the same kind of qualifications as our guides. So um, when we know that they're able to come back for a given week or so, we'll offer and advertise a provisional trip. But otherwise, never hurts to ask, and I typically get back to people in a day or so. So yeah, so
Exactly.
it's all conversation based.
Awesome. Now, do you guys? I know every program's a little different as far as cost, and I don't want to date the podcast and throw out some costs from this year, but what do you? Is it per person or per crew, or how do you guys work that?
Most of our costs are per person. The only trip that we have that is a per crew cost is for sailing, and that's because it costs a certain amount to reserve the boat with the company that we work with, and so that's basically the cost of the trip right there. So whether you have 4 people or 6 people, it's going to cost the group the same. So if you fill that group out, then it makes it a little easier.
We all know the major high adventure bases around the country, and they offer some awesome programs. Have you been searching for a cool alternative from your typical high adventure trip? As a scout leader, I want to give our scouts some great alternatives. You need to check out highadventurescouting.com. You'll find information on over 30 different council high adventure bases in 24 states. Maybe you're looking for a do-it-yourself option and need some ideas. Maybe you've taken a great trip and you want to share your good fortune with your fellow scouts and scouters. Just send us the details and we'll publish your trip. Whatever your interest, highadventurescouting.com is the one-stop shop for all things high adventure. That's highadventurescouting.com. As far as sailing, it's a lot of people are familiar with how Sea Base down in Florida does. That's kind of how they do it. So that's pretty similar to that. So,
Yep.
well, tell me about the sailing. I don't think we've talked about that unless I didn't write it down.
No, we didn't.
All
That's
right, good.
that one always slips my mind because it's one that I haven't personally been on yet. I've been on all of the other ones. I've helped run logistics for it, but I haven't actually been out on the boats myself yet. But that is sailing in the Apostle Islands. So we work with a company up there that has Boy Scout guides, and they have their captains are all Coast Guard registered, and they follow all the rules and regulations for that. And they know the Apostle Islands like the back of their hands. They live up there, they work there, they do these sailing trips all summer long, and they know all the really cool spots to take people. It's always been one of those treks where it's like I need to make time to go out on this because it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's and of course, like I said, a lot of people are familiar with Sea Base because it's a an option a lot of troops will go to.
Hmm.
But I contend there are some options like this, maybe closer to the Midwest, depending on where people are coming from, and it's
Hmm.
probably less expensive and more people can go on these
Yeah.
kind of trips. So
Yeah, it's definitely less expensive than sea base or
yeah.
any of the other national bases. And the nice thing with the council run high adventure base is that we are able to take scouts as young as 13 if they've or completed eighth grade is kind of that rule. I want to say that most of the national bases are 14 and up only. Um,
Yeah, and it depends on the trip. I mean, I've been to all the major high adventure bases myself, and the one that is probably the most difficult is obviously Philmont because you're doing a lot of backpacking. That takes a little bit older scouts. Some of the other things like I'd say sea base or sailing adventure is less strenuous. Yeah, there are some times, but it was not strenuous for me at all because I just sat there and watched the boys do all the work. It was a vacation for me. So
yeah, I've done sea
this
base a couple times
this
as a youth, and it was a lot of fun.
yes, yeah, that's the easy high adventure base, I think, and it's just fun. But and as far as the sailing venture up your neck of the woods, that sounds like a really cool option
Hmm.
to do out there. So
Yeah.
now
And
we're
there was one other trip that I forgot to
mm,
mention, which is our Apostle Islands kayaking trek, which is
mhm.
it's based out of the same town, but you get to go kayaking, and it's another sea based style program or swamp based style program where you're just fully out there just on your kayaks. So
Cool. And I had read about that, and I forgot to mention that also. So it's you've got a lot of options. That's
got a
really
lot of
cool.
options. It's really easy to have some of them slip your mind.
Oh,
But
exactly,
they're
exactly.
all up on our website. So
Now, where do most of your scouts come from geographically? You're in Wisconsin, so and you utilize a lot of the resources up in that neck of the woods. But what where do most people come from?
yeah, so our council's based in Northeast Illinois, so that's where a lot of our scouts come from. But we've had scouts come from as far away as Washington D.C., and I think we had one from Georgia a few years ago too. So we're slowly getting um, a lot more people from all over the country. But a lot of our folks come from Illinois or Wisconsin. Um,
And that would be expected because it's much easier to get there and less travel costs. So
mhm.
um, now for all these, I mean, you've got so many programs that this may be a open question, but as far as units signing up to get a spot in a particular program,
Mhm.
how early should they push? Start contacting you guys and get things together.
Yeah, well, our registration officially opens November 1st, so really express interest as soon as you can, especially for those further out trips like the um, Isle Royale, especially just to make sure we can get permits. Because again, since we try to be as flexible as possible with units, we try and work with them to figure out. We'll send over maps, we'll send over a guidebook, and just make sure that we're having that conversation so we're not planning a trip for them that they're not interested in or that they don't want to do. We don't want to plan a trip that's a 65-mile trip for a group that only wants to go 25.
Yeah, exactly,
That's just not
exactly.
that's not very friendly or courteous.
Yeah, our
um,
we were up in the Boundary Waters last summer, and our crew they had no desire to go 100 miles or anything like that. Well, there was one of our scouts that did, and the rest of them overruled him. And I think they went up 60 miles, I think, through the whole trek. And my son was with me on that trip, and he said, that was pretty relaxing. We get into camp at 1 o'clock or whenever, and just relax the rest of the day. I said, yeah, that's
yeah,
that's fun. So
it, there's definitely something to be said about the really easy trips, and there's something really rewarding about doing those really grueling trips. I think when I went to Philmont, we did an 85-mile trek,
wow.
and that was a lot, but we were we were pushed at the end of the day, and we slept really well.
Yeah, I one of our high adventure coordinators in our troop took a group several years ago, and he he saw one of the groups that was, I think they were on a 100-mile trip, and he said, "Man, they looked like they were just dead," and because they had on 100 miles, and he said, "Here we are in the 70-mile trek, and we thought it was difficult, but we were having a good time." So, it really depends on what you want to do and what you want out of it, and
Yeah, and
so
I've been on our flambeau trip with groups that just want to hang around, and I'll just show them all the good fishing spots, and we'll go fishing or just hang out in hammocks and have a nice relaxing high adventure trek. And then I've had other groups where we island hop every single day, or we just do a race to see how quickly we can go down and have to reschedule our pickup points because we blew past it because they just wanted to keep further.
that's awesome, and that's the beauty of programs like this. You can really tailor it to go where you want to go and what the boys want to do, because
Hmm.
it's not about the leaders; it's about the boys and how they want to. Well, now um, I've been in scouts a long time. Changed my thinking that there are girl groups coming up that direction also. So
Yeah, and we're with that actually we're making a pretty big push to make sure we've got women guides, and just to make sure that we can fully accommodate all the different groups of people that are coming our way. So if as long as the youth are eligible to go to the to go on high adventure trips, we're willing to take a unit there, whether it's a troop or a ship or a crew. We've had all groups of folks. So
that's awesome. That's great. Now this may vary depending on the program, but I always ask about equipment and what the as far as tents and backpacks, those kind of things. What kind of things do you guys provide as a high adventure base, and what big things that should they bring with them on these trips?
yeah, we'll provide all of the group gear, um, and we do have some backpacks as well. We try and get replacement ones, and we do kind of a rotation with our gear where every 3 to 4 years we'll rotate everything out and just kind of do a replacement as we can with everything. So we're constantly getting new stuff, and we're constantly testing out different equipment to see what works well and what areas. Like I keep mentioning it, the flambeau, just because it's like I said before, it's one of my favorite ones. But the water
Mm-hmm.
there is really tannin rich, so it's got a lot of it clogs up filters really quickly. So there's some filters that work well in that environment, and some that don't work so well. So we kind of tailor the equipment to the destination based on what we know about that area, and I think that's a really nice, it's a really good thing to be able to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, does that include? Do the units need to bring tents with them?
We've got tents as well. So we've
Okay.
got tents for people. Really, if you're coming out to Ma-Ka-Ja-Wan High Adventure Base, you need to bring your own kind of eating equipment. We'll provide the cooking equipment. You'll need to provide your own sleeping bag and sleeping pad. And for our paddling trips, we encourage you to bring your own dry bag, just because that way you can make sure to get one that you like, because they're all a little bit different depending on the company. Um, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because a lot of some high adventure bases will provide tents and equipment, some won't, and that's always a question depending on what the group wants to do. So awesome, and I assume the group gear includes like cooking
Yeah,
equipment and
cooking,
things of that nature.
yeah, the pots and pans and utensils and stove. Depending on what trip, again, we'll either send out a more backpacking style stove if you're going on a backpacking trip, and we have enough gear that we can be flexible with that for canoeing trips too. It's sometimes nice because you're not as space constrained on a canoeing trip because you've got a whole boat to fill if you want. Um, so you can bring it. You can have the comfort of having a two burner stove if you really want to. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, have we missed anything on that you think is important to mention?
Um, I don't think we have. I just like to reiterate that we like to work with units and have that conversation as individual as possible to make the trip exactly what you want it to be. Um, so we try to keep high adventure, and keep it the experience that you're looking for. So
Awesome. All right. Well, this sounds cool. So Well, Rory, I want to thank you for joining us today on the High Adventure Scouting Podcast.
Well, thank you for the invite. It's great to be here, and I think that this is a really really great way to showcase all the awesome high adventure bases that we have in scouting and all the really great experiences that everybody can have.
I agree, and this is as much for me as it is for everybody else. So I appreciate it. So I want to thank Rory Fencl. He's the Council Program Director for the Northeast Illinois Council and the Reservation Director for the Ma-Ka-Ja-Wan High Adventure Base for joining us today. Now, you can get more information on their programs at makajawan.com. That's MAKAJAWAN.com. Thanks for joining us today, and remember to tell your friends about this podcast. You can find us online at highadventurescouting.com, on Facebook or Instagram. If you have any questions or ideas for future podcasts, just email us at info@highadventurescouting.com. This podcast and website are independent and not affiliated with any youth organization. Happy high adventure! This has been a production of High Adventure Resources.